Before joining the galactic stage, most species are victims of what can be universally translated as main protagonist syndrome, an understandable quirk owed to the isolation from other intelligent life forms sapients suffer from before they achieve FTL. Usually by the time a race makes first contact, they have imbibed themselves in at least a couple thousand years of self-centered media portraying them as the main character. This notion rarely survives more than a decade after this point. While the highly educated among them might have considered they weren't the biggest fish in the pond, their subconscious most likely still harbors that collective feeling of superiority that was bred into them through their journey into becoming a Type 2 civilization. In the end, all those who join the galactic stage are in for a culture shock. So it was for us, and so it is for the most recent arrivals, the humans. As a species, they initially appear to be unremarkable. The average height of humans puts them 10% below the galactic standard. Their physical strength and endurance are on par with what can be expected of bipedal mammals who have evolved in a standard gravity world. When it comes to natural lifespan, as determined by genetics, it's 5% higher than average, but conditioned by a predisposition to malicious mutations. A formidable immune system places them in the top 30% in that category, but pales in comparison to species who have evolved to the point that they've become immune to pathogens. Intellectually, humanity's lifespan allows them to reach specialized levels of education and benefit from such experts for a few decades before the next generation has to replace them, once more putting the species right at the galactic average. As a new arrival, their technology level is still primitive, but I foresee trade and reverse engineering will prompt them to quickly catch up to at least the level of other young races. We know mammalians tend to have higher than average innovation values, which raises the possibility of humans entering a golden age as long as their progress isn't impeded. Culturally speaking, human society has followed what we've seen in most species of their type. As a xenohistorian, I must admit my excitement died down pretty quick when I saw humanity fit what seems to be the universal template for mammalian societies. If you happen to be a colleague or enthusiast, I recommend you focus on fungal or insectoid species, as they, more often than not, can provide at least a few unique study opportunities. But let us get back to humans. One oddity worth mentioning is that a survey performed by one of the most prominent galactic entertainment conglomerates merely months after first contact showed 40% of those interviewed found humans to be appealing. This survey, must be said, did not include members of particularly xenophobic races. Still, human talent has been in high demand in recent years, so I cannot say it's just a matter of novelty. Inversely, humans find about 15% of other species appealing, which is 10 points below average, but common in newcomers. The number will most likely climb as they integrate into the galactic community. Humanity's early interactions with other species have also followed our expectations. As a relatively young race with only a handful of planets under their control, they've been quick to seek out commercial and cultural ties with their immediate neighbors and, as one of their sayings goes, made sure not to step on anyone's toes. Universal history shows the disposition of a species during first contact is literally up to a coin flip. Fortunately for humans, they had theirs during a xenophile phase in their social cycle, which in most cases leads to quicker growth and technological development. This might prove a double-edged sword, however, as rapid growth combined with the typically avid expansionism of early FTL civilizations often leads to the weakening of central government and infighting. From this cursory analysis, it would be logical to conclude the earlier label of unremarkable to be adequate. Any advantage humans might have over species which rate lower in a particular category can easily be bridged by commercially available augmentations. On the other hand, when compared to species in the higher brackets, I estimate it'll take at least 10 of their generations before their technology reaches a point where they can close the gap. Even then, this would only compensate for biological shortcomings. While many of the most ancient races have reached a period of technological stagnation, it will still be hundreds of years before humanity begins to even approach their level of advancement. In spite of this, there's still value in studying the species, though not as a whole, but through its individual members. Humanity has been part of the wide galactic community for less than 2 of their generations, yet exceptional stories featuring members of their race have become uncannily common. Many of my colleagues believe this is due to entertainment media taking advantage of the novelty effect, as well as the previously mentioned above-average appealing rates. While it definitely has helped the spread, after reviewing a number of reports and interviewing eyewitnesses, I concluded there was merit in delving deeper into this anomaly. I started at the beginning, with the first reported case of a human's actions going viral. This happened merely 3 years after first contact. By this point, humanity had made FTL drives available to their civilian population, seeking to promote trade both between their own colonies and their neighbors. Soon enough, one of their major interplanetary corporations managed to land a trade deal with a Klepaki Artolu-owned combine, Klealu Mining Ventures. Their majorly mammalian employee base shared dietary similarities with the humans, who, like most recent arrivals, found food to be a cheap but sought-after commodity they could use to enter foreign markets. KMV had been granted a license by the Klepaki Union to exploit mineral-rich, free, roaming asteroids not too far from human space, which made the deal extremely convenient from a logistical point of view. More so when the eager humans were willing to undercut the competition by a considerable margin. As this marked the first time in their history such a thing happened, the chief executive officer of the human company, a magnate by the name of Magnus Luna, accompanied the freighters in their first delivery with the plan to have the deal consigned in physical form, an outdated procedure even by their own standards and completely unnecessary, as the deal had already been given legal status by both sides via electronic signatures. Still, Luna insisted, as he claimed the occasion deserved to be immortalized in more than simple computer code. While a nuisance for KMV management, the Klepaki government pushed them to acquiesce to the humans' request, as it would help cement a friendly relationship with their newfound neighbors. Unfortunately, the convoy was intercepted by a small pirate band who had been prowling in neutral space between both civilizations, knowing the new arrivals would be easy targets. Human freighters could not flee or fight, as even the outdated and decaying pirate ship was completely out of their league. While such acts of piracy are usually overlooked, they knew that wanton destruction, especially when it involved a newly inducted race, would not go unpunished, so they opted for diplomacy. Understanding their position was untenable, Luna agreed to surrender himself as a hostage as long as the convoy was granted safe passage. The pirate band was reluctant. Even if the human ships were of poor quality and their cargo was not valuable, they doubted the ransom for this man would equal their worth. When they voiced their complaints, the magnate simply declared he'd agree to any sum they requested. The human acted boldly, but they doubted whatever assets he owned within the confines of humanity's backwater systems could actually match his bravado. At this point, the pirate handling their translation software came upon a realization. The man had introduced himself as Magnus Luna. The program had translated it as a male name, but the first word could also mean great and king. The second word, on the other hand, was the name of their homeworld's only satellite. While far-fetched, there was a possibility they had gotten their hands on human royalty, an opportunity they were not going to pass up. Of course, it was all nonsense. While humanity indeed has some monarchy remnants from bygone eras, such figures serve only ceremonial purposes, and there has never been a king of Luna. The entire misunderstanding can be blamed on the pirates' outdated translation software and the lack of readily available knowledge about humanity at the time. Emboldened by their apparent luck, the pirates set the ransom at the astronomical sum of 50 million credits. They thought it was unlikely a human, royalty or not, was able to pay that, but they expected some haggling. There was none. Luna only requested a few minutes to make the necessary arrangements with his underlings to ensure the sum could be gathered in his absence. He then boarded a shuttle and surrendered himself as agreed. The pirates were not only astonished, they were annoyed. They had underestimated their quarry. 50 million credits, and the mammal didn't bat an eye. Once Luna had been apprehended, the convoy was allowed to leave. Given the assumed rank of their prisoner, he was given the best quarters the pirate ship had to spare. It might have not been much by normal standards, but they expected someone from a species that had only recently discovered FTL would have little to complain about it. In that, they were correct. Luna endured captivity with a stoicity befitting his station, not that of a king, as the pirates had mistakenly guessed, but that of a ruthless businessman. Their arrangement had been that the ransom would be paid in 3 months. The location for the exchange was to be transmitted to the ship carrying the credits once it entered a designated sector. While they believed their superior senses would prevent any possible ambush, there was always a chance the humans had hired outside help, so it paid to be cautious. The day finally arrived, and the human freighter jumped in at the precise scheduled time. Scans came up clean, and no reinforcements showed up after moving the meeting place a few times, so the pirates finally decided to go through with the deal. However, once they had secured the crates with the ransom in their cargo bay, a murmur began among the crew. The 50 million credits were there, neatly packed in the crude human containers. Some had suspected they would come up with an excuse for delivering less than arranged. Some thought the captain had made a mistake by letting the ships go. All were proven wrong. But now there was another problem, one of greed. Had they missed a golden opportunity? No, of course not. They were pirates after all. The captain approached Luna, who was being guarded by 2 of his subordinates while he talked with one of the other humans who had brought in the ransom. Their conversation halted at his arrival. His captive turned to face him and spoke. "Am I free to go?" he asked. "No." The captain responded succinctly, partly because the onboard translator on his suit had trouble handling human speech and partly to project an intimidating aura. "We had a deal," Luna emphasized as he narrowed his eyes, an expression the captain correctly understood as a show of anger. 50 million more, he requested, unfazed by the mammal's aggressive tone. "That will take at least another 3 months. Luna stated, more to himself than the pirate. "We wait." The captain answered matter-of-factly. In truth, he was rather surprised. Once more, the manling had not batted an eye at the sum. Just how much did he have at his disposal? Luna went into deep thought, sinking his head into his chest for a few moments. Whatever emotions passed through his face, the captain did not care to discern. It didn't matter. They held all the cards. Eventually, his captive composed himself and looked up at the towering captain with his signature stoic expression once more. "Agreed," he said coldly. They repeated the same process. Orders were signed and given to Luna's subordinates so they could gather the required sum, and a new sector was decided for the next exchange. The only difference was that this time their captive had a small canister delivered to him from the freighter. A quick inspection showed it contained only paper and writing tools. The captain thought it was weird but innocuous, so he allowed the human to have his toys. Laden with credits and other loot from previous raids, the pirates chose to unload at their hideout. It was a hollowed-out asteroid in a nearby sector which hosted the derelict remains of a mining station. Had anyone scanned the location in their absence, they would have found nothing, as they kept the installation completely powered down and devoid of atmosphere when they weren't using it. A month was spent ashore, with Luna being moved to quarters at the station as well. Small contingents of pirates left on shuttles to buy provisions with their newly acquired riches, coming back with extravagant delicacies they would have never been able to afford before. As you'd expect, they spent most of the time at the station indulging in all the pleasures their newfound wealth could afford them, which were quite a few. Their mood was in such heights that they even made sure to treat their captive as befitting royalty, showering him with exotic foods and drinks. Luna accepted them with only cursory gratitude. The pirates didn't blame him after all. He was technically paying for it out of his own pocket. Eventually the captain brought the debauchery to a stop, not because they were running low on funds. They had merely scratched the surface of those, but to make sure his crew didn't eat and drink themselves to death. Provisions were loaded into their ship, and they set off once more in search for minor prey, while they waited for their next payday. The following 2 months went by with only a handful of encounters, not due to lack of targets, but out of reluctance from the pirates. Why would they risk a stand-up fight with an escort when they had more than they could spend in years awaiting them back at their base? By the time their scheduled meeting with the humans came, their cargo bay had only a few crates of raw minerals and an old shuttle they took from a private mining vessel who had risked working in neutral space. The same human freighter jumped in at the meeting point once more exactly at the scheduled time. The signal was sent, the final meeting location changed a few times. Business as usual. After an hour or so, both ships finally met. This time, however, after the docking collar had latched onto the human vessel, their side of the airlock remained closed. A few minutes passed. The captain ordered his comms officer to open a channel to complain about the delay, but as they did, a strong signal came from the human ship. They had not even bothered with encryption. It was their current location. "Release the docking collar and start plotting a jump," the captain said calmly. He had half expected a trick. In fact, he didn't even resent them for it. After all, they were the first ones to go back on their word. If anything, he respected the new arrivals for showing some spine. It didn't change anything. They would get their money another day. No matter who they called, they would be far away before they arrived. "Sir, the docking clasps are unresponsive. I can't disengage the collar," one of his subordinates reported with some urgency. "Captain, contact! With a mass like that, it has to be at least a cruiser. 1 minute at most before they reach us." Another one cried. "So they got outside help after all. Smart, but not enough. Engage thrusters. We'll break the collar and get out of here before they get to us," he ordered. But it would not be that easy. As soon as their thrusters came online, the human ship engaged theirs as well, matching their movement so as to keep the ships docked together. While their output was considerably lower, their smaller size meant physics worked in their favor. The collar strained, screeching like a wounded beast, but no matter the violence of the pirates' maneuvers, they could not shake off the persistent humans. 20 seconds, screamed the pirate in charge of sensors as he held on for dear life to his seat, the ship's inertial compensators unable to handle the strain. "Shoot them off," demanded another crewmate. "They're too close for cannons, and missiles would blow us up too," the weapons officer shouted back. "Prepare to jump. We'll just take them with us," ordered the captain, his composure beginning to crack. "I can't lock in a jump vector with them shaking us around like that." came the desperate response from their navigator. "Disengage the safeties and jump us blind," the captain commanded, his voice conveying just how dangerous what they were about to do was. The bridge went silent for a second and then became a flurry of fastening safety belts. A blaring siren accompanied the warning message sent to the rest of the ship. "Safeties off, jumping in, 3, 2... But the pirate was stopped short. Less than 20 kilometers away, a Klepaki Tondura cruiser dropped out of FTL. Not only was it more than capable of blowing them to smithereens, it was equipped with an inhibitor, which explained why the navigator's console was all broken code and warning messages. "Disengage all thrusters and bring the prisoner to the bridge," their leader ordered calmly. Luna joined them with the canister he was given under his arm, as the captain was hearing the predictable demands from the Klepaki cruiser. He muted the broadcast from their side, but kept the channel open so they could listen in. "Well played, human, but somewhat pointless. They won't destroy us while you're on board, which means we can't let you go. How do you propose we solve this?" the captain asked, much more eloquent now that he could take advantage of the bridge's translator. "The Klepaki have my permission to destroy this ship if you don't surrender," Luna informed him with a deadpan voice. "And risk an international incident with your race? Doubtful. I don't know if you are royalty or just filthy rich, but in either case you are definitely important enough not to kill," the captain retorted, unconvinced. "Royalty? But I was very rich. The ransom you requested was covered by selling most of my assets. Asking the company to pay would have been improper, considering it was me who insisted on coming along with the convoy, despite warnings from the other board members. The only thing left to my name was my majority stake, which I knew would allow me to bounce back after this. That was, until you went back on our deal. My shares might have covered a second payment, but there was no assurance you wouldn't request a third, so I decided my last card would be played differently. I sold them to KMV. The conditions for that deal, I believe, are obvious enough. As to me being important, I might have been when I had a seat in the company's directorate. After selling all my shares, however, that has also been taken away from me," Luna explained calmly. A moment passed while the translator worked, and then another while the captain considered the words that had come out of his captive. "Even if what you say is true, we have no reason to surrender. The Klepaki execute pirates. Pretty sure the boys and I would rather go out fighting," the captain finally said. "Only if you surrender to them," Luna simply stated. "What? The captain finally understood what the human's plan was. "Surrender your ship to me. My men will board and take over. This is neutral space. As soon as this ship is under our control, the Klepaki cruiser has no further business here. Once they leave, I give you my word, we'll allow you and your men to leave without being followed," the prisoner explained. "Once more, assuming you're speaking the truth, I suppose you'll want your credits back," the captain asked, pretending he didn't know the answer already. "You let our convoy through, so I consider our initial deal to be somewhat valid. Those credits are yours," Luna said dismissively. The captain opened all of his 6 eyes in disbelief. I imagine the first thing he thought was that it was too good to be true. A ship that was barely good enough to raid on the outskirts of small civilizations in exchange for their lives and 50 million credits. With the shuttle they had taken from that miner ship, they had enough seats to evacuate the entire crew, so what the human suggested was indeed feasible. He might have tried to decide if the man could be trusted, but ultimately there was only one conclusion he could logically arrive at. Trust the human, in which case he might die. Or not, in which case he would surely die. "Agreed," he finally said, to the relief of his crew. Luna nodded and took a large parchment from the canister he was holding. He placed it on the closest surface and pointed at a dotted line in the bottom. "This contract contains the terms of our agreement. Sign your rank and name here, and it will be finalized," he asked as he held a writing utensil out. The captain scoffed. He hadn't actually written anything by hand since he was a youngling, so it took some effort, but he eventually did as requested. "I thought my ship would have been trophy enough, human," he complained half-heartedly. "Kindly inform our freighter the deal has been concluded and open your side of the airlock," Luna answered as he wrapped the contract with utmost care and placed it back inside the canister. His crew poured in, less in number than the pirates, and wielding primitive weapons, but with the threat of the Klepaki still looming outside, it would have been pointless to try anything. The pirates relinquished their arms and were led to the shuttles, the captain being last to board as he stayed behind to confirm the cruiser left. One by one, the shuttles flew off, probably half expecting to be blown up at any moment. But the human kept his word. They engaged their drives and left the crafty mammal behind. Or so they thought. It took a few days, as the shuttle's FTL drives had longer cooldown periods and less range, but eventually the entire gang arrived back at their hideout. To their surprise, not only hours after they had settled in and began talking about what their new ship would be, their previous one jumped in. Without sparing any warning, it fired on every docking bay and landing pad. Not only did they destroy all of their shuttles, the damage was so great that by the time the emergency bulkheads kicked in, they had lost most of their atmosphere. "So much for your word, human," the captain spitefully said as they finally deigned to hail them, Luna sitting on his old chair. "We did not follow you. We found you." The man answered undisturbed. "I should have known. What did you do? Put trackers in our shuttles or something?" The captain continued, not believing a word. "Our race doesn't have that kind of technology, but I will admit we arranged for you to capture that mining shuttle, so there'd be enough capacity to evacuate all of you. In any case, as I said, we found you. Your hideout is an old KMV mining station. I had more than enough time to confirm that while you hosted me. The serial number for this facility is written on almost all of its doors, including the one to my old quarters. It only took our friends half an hour to find it in their records," he explained coldly. "So what now? We either give back your credits or suffocate to death," came the angry response from the station. "That's what a pirate would do. I'm a businessman who lost the opportunity to sign the first ever commercial contract between my species and another because of your greed. Had you released me as we agreed, I would have still made it. But since you decided to extend my captivity, someone else signed his own contract and took that historic moment from me. But now that doesn't matter. Thanks to you, I've become the first human to take control of a pirate ship, in space at least. And I'll further make the history books when we reverse engineer this vessel. In appreciation for that, I'll offer you a new deal. I'll supply you with a month of breathable atmosphere for 45 million credits. That should leave more than enough to buy your way out of that station, if you are lucky," Luna offered, with a barely noticeable hint of satisfaction in his voice. The pirates had no choice but to agree. Even if they called for help, and the humans didn't blow them up the moment their signal left the station, there was almost no chance anyone would be able to reach them in time. Reluctantly, they placed the crates full of credits on the remains of a landing pad. A shuttle flew in and collected them, leaving behind a single atmospheric tank, too small to last them the promised month. "So your word is not worth much after all, human," the captain fumed after he was informed of the betrayal. "I've held up my side of the bargain. I promised you enough atmosphere to last a month. There should be that and a bit more in the tank that was delivered. Share it with your crew or not, that is not of my concern." Luna answered coldly, "You may be more dangerous than a king." The utter defeat in the captain's voice was unmistakable. A king is dangerous because of his influence. Such a thing is only useful in his own kingdom. I'm a businessman. My power lies in wealth. Wealth is useful wherever there's something or someone to be bought or sold. I hope now you understand how much of an understatement what you said was, Captain." His tone was laden with a gravity that made it clear this was no taunting. This was the philosophy the man lived by. A curt nod would be the last of Magnus Luna they would see. Communications were cut, and the pirates left to their fate, whatever it may be. As the man had stated, it was not of his concern. He had achieved what he wanted, and more. Not only had he become the first human to commandeer a spacefaring vessel, he's the only one in galactic record to have actual written proof of it. The contract, as I understand, was given to a famous museum back in their homeworld for safekeeping. As for the pirate ship, whose onboard systems are our main source for the dialogues I've reproduced in this lecture, it became the foundation for Luna's new company, a vast departure from his previous business in agriculture, but one that has multiplied his fortune manifold. To say he is one, if not the richest human alive today, would not be an understatement. The virulence with which this story spread across the galaxy was outstanding. Studies show that merely weeks after the incident, about 32% of media consumers had come across it. Such awareness rates are almost unheard of for civilian matters, especially those of a newly inducted race like the humans. When compared to other topics trending at the time, it was only slightly below the Jiaoshu rebellion. Let me reinstate that. Almost as many beings were aware of a human outsmarting a pirate gang as they were of the downfall of one of the largest empires in the galaxy. Truly remarkable. This amount of exposure spawned a myriad of sayings, such as "never break a deal with a human," "a wealthy human is more dangerous than an armed one," or "a human's parting words are colder than space." Most of them were overreactions to the superficial elements of the story. It's important to understand the point behind his actions. For him, there was only one thing that mattered. The deals, the credits, even his final speech to the captain were all secondary. Drawing species-wide assumptions from this single incident would be a mistake. The only certain thing we can conclude is that for Magnus Luna, his ambition to be a protagonist in his race's history eclipsed everything else. Are all humans like this? Definitely not. But it only took one for most of the galaxy to think so.